Hello guys, Garcia here, and today we'll be talking about 13 Ghosts, which is my favorite horror movie of all time, and is also one of my favorite movies of all time. And this movie is actually a remake from the 1960 version, that was directed by William Castle originally. So Dark Castle Entertainment remade this movie in 2001. This is the second remake that they did. They also did House on Haunted Hill, which I'll be talking about in later videos in the channel. So today we'll be talking about the 2001 version, which, as I said, is my favorite horror movie of all time. Now, talking a little bit about the first version, I'm not going to go into details about the movie and stuff, but about uh, mainly the glasses, right? That were called the spectral viewers, which were basically one of the many gimmicks that William Castle used to employ back in the 50s and 60s in his movies. Uh, Basically, most of his movies would have like these gimmicks, these extra things to involve the audience somehow, to interest them somehow, make them part of it. So there was these glasses that you actually, if you look for them, they still exist. You can still buy them from people and stuff. And they were basically true colored glasses. As far as I know, they were called the Illusion O or Illusion Zero glasses. So you would choose which glasses you wanted to use, right? So if you used probably the blue one, you wouldn't see the ghosts. And if you used the red one, you would see the ghosts, or the opposite of what I said. So it was basically a way to engage the audience, to give them the choice to see the ghost in the movie or not. So it's very interesting. Even though the movie itself is not that great, to be honest, House on Haunted Hill is way better. House on Haunted Hill is actually a great movie. 13 Ghosts is okay, the original one. It's passable, but has the gimmick, which is very interesting and very forward thinking for William Castle to do. And I firmly believe that if William Castle was alive today, he would be able to, tell great stories and also be able to do these gimmicky movies that he loved to do so much, way more frequently because they're streaming and stuff. So he would be able to find a home for his movies. But enough about the past. So let's talk about the actual movie. Just a small little thing before we start about the cover art. Actually, the cover art of the movie is great. I always liked it. I have the version that I have here in my house is with that cover art on it. But while researching for some materials to use in this video, I actually stumbled upon the box cover art, and man, that version is pretty sexy. It's pretty good. So I hope I can find this one day. So, quick disclaimer before I start the actual review. I am not a native speaker of the English language, as you might have noticed already. So I will stumble here and there and stuff, but I hope we can understand each other well enough. So, the movie starts on the junkyard sequence, which is my favorite, like 7, 8, 9 minutes, opening minutes of any horror movie ever. There's no other horror movie that sold itself better to me this quickly and scared me so much right at the beginning. The only one that comes close to me is either House on Haunted Hill, which was the riot in the sanatorium, and the other one would be Sinister, the first, basically the first shot of the movie. As far as I remember, it already starts with a family hanging from a tree and something, with some sacks over their heads and stuff. So it really is one hell of an imagery to start your movie with. But I still think 13 Ghosts has the edge here. So basically, the cars come on the junkyard, and Cyrus and Dennis come out. So Cyrus is our main antagonist, right? And Cyrus Criticus, which is basically a ghost hunter, a spiritual energy hunter, and Dennis Refkin, which is he's a psychic, and he also helps Cyrus with the energy hunting, right? So before I continue on where I was talking about, I'd like to talk about the weirdest thing in this movie, which is actually the casting. The casting of this movie is very weird. Not bad, just weird. You have Tony Shalhoub, which is our main character, Arthur Criticals, which is known for his stage work, basically, a Broadway actor. Comedic roles, dramatic roles, Monk, the Monk series. So it's weird, him being the main guy on a horror movie. You have Matthew Lillard, which is Dennis Rathke, my favorite horror movie character of all time, by the way. He was still riding high after breaking out in the Scream franchise, right? But he did a lot of comedic stuff, and later on would become Shaggy. So it's kind of funny looking at it now, after you see him as Shaggy and stuff. You have Shannon Elizabeth, which is Kathy Criticos, which was basically a sex symbol back in the day, since she was in the American Pie movies and did Scary Movie too, which is a very funny movie, and also did more comedic work. So another one that's weird that she was chosen here. You have Embeth Davids, which is Kalina, and to me she's always going to be Matilda's teacher. There's no way I would never see her as Matilda's teacher. So seeing her in this movie is very weird too. You have F. Murray Abraham, so Cyrus Criticus, right? And he's perfect for this role from Amadeus Frame, right? She's a very successful actor, Oscar winner, Golden Globe winner, and stuff. I think by that point he had like a 4 or 5 decades long career by that point. So it was a great choice for a villain of this movie. He's kind of a campy type of villain, not too deep and stuff, but his voice is amazing. His voice is perfect for the role. It's such a weird group of actors for this movie. But I actually think for this movie specifically, it actually helped. It made the movie stand out even more because of the casting. Some critics hated the casting of this movie. They felt that everybody was out of place and stuff. But I actually think that mostly, for the most part, the casting was pretty good. So back to what I was saying. So Cyrus and Dennis are talking about the ghost that they are hunting specifically in the junkyard, and he was known as the Breaker when he was alive. So his name was Horace Mahoney, as far as I remember. I am not going to talk a lot about the history of each ghost here. These histories are not told in the movie. They are told in the, I think, Ghost Files was called, an DVD extra that they made for the movie. They wrote the stories basically, but they had no way to put them in the movie without the movie getting too bloated, I imagine. And there was no reason to tell their stories really in the movie. So what they did was just make an extra feature on the DVDs, and leave the movie completely removed from that content. But his name was Horace, and he was known as the Breaker. Was a very, very big guy that lived basically alone after, I think, his father died on the junkyard. So he just started killing people and got killed by the cops, and basically became a ghost that haunted that particular junkyard. So Dennis, which is a psychic, touches the ground, and he notices that there's a huge discrepancy between the 9, which is the number of people that Horace killed while he was alive, and there was 40 victims there, as far as he could tell. So Cyrus tells him basically that Horace killed way more people after he became a ghost. So he's one of the few ghosts in the movie which is actually extremely dangerous and violent. So he has a history of killing after he died. So it's one of the best established threats, I think, or establishment of threats in the beginning of a movie, because you have a truck full of blood, which is the bait, which Dennis says that they never used the bait before, so he's the only ghost that needs a bait, which is a truck full of blood. You have the containment cube, which to show you how they have to develop this highly technological prison to keep this ghost in. You have the goons, right? The soldiers that are all around the place trying to set up stuff, and you have the spells, which are in Latin, so you have to activate the spells to bring on the ghost, and you have obviously the kills. The initial kills are absolutely brutal. I can't obviously show the kills here, but if you watch the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So you have, forgive me, you have right at the beginning of the movie, you have crazy kills, you have a huge threat established, you have a truck full of blood, you have Latin, you have containment cubes, you have a psychic, you have an energy hunter, and also in the sequence before they start the chants, the spells, they meet Damon and Kalina, which are as far as I remember, she says in the movie that she's in the spirit reclamation business. So they basically try to free trapped souls. That's what they do. So they confront Cyrus there and they make fun of them and stuff. And so the whole thing happens. Uh, the breaker comes, which we will soon know him by his name. It's his own name on the Black Zodiac. He is the Juggernaut, right? So he comes and he kills a lot of people, and he gets stuck in the cube alongside another guy. The poor guy is just absolutely wrecked by him. The actor choice for this character was perfect because they needed someone very big, and that with the makeup could look very menacing, and it's absolutely perfect. They nailed it. The dude looks scary as hell, looks extremely strong, and just kills without remorse or thinking or anything. He just goes and kills people. There's no in between with this guy. So all of this in like 8 9 minutes. You know, all of this in the very first moment of the movie. That was very smart. You know, that's for a lot of people that whole sequence is the best part of the movie, which might be, especially because of the kills and stuff. The movie doesn't have a lot of kills, but we'll see. That's what I think while we proceed here with the review. So another thing that you notice right away is that this movie has a great soundtrack. There were complaints back in the day a lot about it being too loud, just this booming sounds and stuff, and it is too loud. But it's also a great soundtrack. It's one of those soundtracks that you once you hear basically every track, you can trace it back in your brain where you heard it in the movie. You know, most soundtracks they just kind of go by. You don't really connect anything to anything. But in this case, you are really able to make meaningful connections and remember the the specific parts of the movie, right? So after the Juggernaut is captured, we see the opening credits transition, which is absolutely great too. Is another thing that folks always cite when they talk about this movie. Is the transition between the happy family and the camera. The camera just keeps panning, just keeps showing the room, and the room starts to change once the accident with the fire that struck the home starts happening, and Jane dies and stuff, which is the wife of Arthur, our main character. So that whole scene, which starts very calm, and then goes through the entire thing until it reaches the grief state when we see the character grieving while looking at the window. That whole opening sequence is so great that you forget that is an opening sequence. Basically, is a credit sequence. So the names are popping up, and you're not even paying attention to the names because it's engaging. That was very well done. So we learned that Arthur has two kids, Kathy and Bobby, and Maggie, which is the babysitter that they hire to take care of Bobby and stuff. And you learn that they are in a very difficult spot because of the fire. And a lawyer comes. This lawyer guy is basically the most villainous looking lawyer that I have ever seen. This guy has like 2 or 3 red flags stuck in his head. It's amazing. He has the evil look. So he comes and shows them the will of his uncle Cyrus Criticus that he actually just met twice, I think, when he was a child. They weren't close at all. And one detail in this scene is that even the key to the house is cool, and you will see as long as we are talking about the movie that in a lot of points they go the extra mile. In a lot of points they kind of create a little bit extra lore. In a lot of different points they didn't need it to visually create things to show in the movie, but they do. So it's a lot of work put on the lore, you know. So even the key, even the key has a different look. So he delivers them the key of the house that they got in the will of the uncle, and they decide to go there. So in this scene, you have the transition that shows Kalina for the second time actually, and she's like in her workshop or office or someplace. And here's another scene that if you like slow it down, or if you pay attention and watch it a few times, you are going to notice several details about parts of the Arcanum and news clips and mystical materials and stuff. Not mystical, occultist. I don't even know what word to use in relation to the spirits in this movie. So even Kalina's office has a cool look to it, even though it like appears on the screen for like 20, 30 seconds maybe. But another nice detail and world building aspect of the movie, right? So, and also we have the first look, like as I said, at the book, right? The Arcanum, which is the thing that I like the most about the entire movie. Is not actually the ghosts or the house. Is actually the fact that they partially wrote this book with these drawings and stuff. A book that is a few hundred years old and stuff. So we'll talk about more about it later. So they reach the house. The house obviously looks ridiculously impressive. They partially built it, and the other part they multiplied it with CGI and stuff. Even though most of it is CGI, it actually still looks pretty good. And obviously with the Latin inscriptions on the glass panes and stuff. We'll talk about more about them later too. So Dennis Rafkin, which is as I said my all-time favorite horror character, is there. So he is wearing the orange jumpsuit that power guys usually use. So he's there and he gains access to the house because Arthur lets him in and stuff to check the breakers and all that stuff, which is obviously a lie. So Arthur uses the key on the lock, and that's another interesting aspect of the movie is that at this point we don't know that the house is actually a machine yet. So the lock and key in this case is basically a start button to the machine. The moment he inserts the key, the machine starts, but not the releasing parts of the ghost that will start later. So he opens up the door, and they get in, and they there's my favorite soundtrack in the movie plays right here. This scene, there's a song that evokes like a sense of wonder and amazement because they are truly amazed by everything that they are seeing. And this scene is also interesting because Dennis is just in passing. Dennis instantly notices that something is off. He's like, why would you build a glass house here and stuff? So he apparently doesn't know. So remember that he's going to this place to try to get the money that Cyrus owes him, because Cyrus was killed. I don't think I mentioned that. Was killed in the beginning of the movie while they were trying to get the breaker, the Juggernaut, right? So him and Damon, the guy that walked in with Kalina, both died there. So he wasn't paid. So he came to the house basically to get the payment. So he doesn't know anything yet of how bad the place is, but he's going to find out pretty soon. So he asks the lawyer, where's the basement? while the lawyer is talking to the family and stuff, showing the house. And he goes to the basement, and that's the first point in the movie where the great vibe that they were able to create here starts to shine. The basement has an amazing vibe. The sound design is amazing too because you not only hear the creaks and cracks of the house itself, but the machine, right? But you also start hearing the murmurs. You start hearing the sounds that the the ghosts are making. And as you know, he's a psychic, so he's going to be more attuned to that. He's going to notice this type of stuff way easier than a regular person. The lighting is also amazing because it's not completely dark, but obviously it's not there's not great sources of light there either. So it's kind of somber. It's very interesting, and he starts having spasms, right? So he kind of connects to the spiritual world. Everything he does is he has his spasms and stuff. He stops and starts feeling pain, especially in his head, is because basically he's having that connection with the other world, with the spiritual world, apparently. And the nice detail that I noticed watching this time to cover cover the movie here in this video was that he comes in the house already with the glasses. So you think, well, if he just came here just to get the money or search for the money while dressed as a power guy, why would he bring in the glasses? It's because probably he's always walking around the glasses because he can see the spiritual world and stuff. But I also like to believe that he knew that maybe if he went to Cyrus's place, something would be up, some ghost might show up, or maybe, just maybe, he kept the ghost there. But obviously he wasn't sure about that at all. But just to be safe, he walks around with the glasses. I like that detail right there. So after having this experience, he comes back to the office where the lawyer and Arthur are talking about the house and documents and stuff. And he comes back to warn them about the ghosts, especially Arthur. It's kind of a tried and true idea, obviously, in horror. That goes in the attic, goes in the basement, goes in specific parts of the house. But we'll see how this movie specifically deviates from this idea later on. So the lawyer recognizes him instantly uh, as the guy that has been trying to get his money back from the uncle. And Matthew Lillard does a great job in this entire sequence since the moment he comes back until the lawyer vanishes. The entire dialogue that he delivers pretty well. It's very realistic for his character. So at this point, we have a few of exploration scenes, let's call it that, while the Arthur and the lawyer and Dennis are talking about different things in the library. The kids are walking around the house, obviously, they're just exploring and stuff. And right here, you start to notice this movie has a tonal problem. It has the babysitter character, Maggie, which is the comic relief, which is weird to have a comic relief in this movie. Is kind of a 2000s horror movie trope to have this character that always do some cracky wise ass jokes, Marvel style, you know. I love Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Buffy has a lot of these characters that just tell jokes constantly, basically. So all the babysitter scenes in this movie, for the most part, are pretty much pointless, other than the ones that are really important to the plot, because she kind of saves everybody in the end. But we'll talk about that when you get there. So back to the story. The lawyer goes to the basement while Dennis is having his one of his spasms, and Arthur stays with him. So the lawyer goes there. Uh, it's a nice contrast because obviously people will fear this ghost a lot throughout the movie, but he's like joking around with them and kind of threatening them and stuff. It's obviously a really bad idea, but it's pure arrogance, and it's what you expect from an evil guy lawyer, right? So he gets his money from a briefcase, and inadvertently he activates the main mechanism of the house. So he starts the machine basically, and then he meets the angry princess, which is the first ghost release, and gets killed by the moving glass panes, right, while trying to evade her. And obviously, in this scene, you also notice that the creators, they kind of opted for the ghosts to blink, constantly blink in and out of the screen to show their supernatural properties and existence, right? Alongside with the distorted voices, you also hear them constantly. It's like they phase in and out, so they are phasers in a way. So they are phasing in and out of the mortal plane, so they can never completely exist in this world again, as time and space for them seems to affect them differently in a way. So it's a very unique trait of this movie that gets amplified by the fact that real actors play the ghosts, not CGI monstrosities and stuff. It's not necessarily bad, but for this movie and for what they are going for is perfect. We'll talk a little bit more about phasing in and out and other characteristics of the ghost of this movie a little later on. The moment basically that the first lever goes up, signaling the release of the first ghost, is when the movie really starts in a way. So the tone of the movie shifts dramatically because Dennis convinces Arthur that something very fishy is going on and the house starts to move. So the moment it starts to move and the moment the lawyer dies is where the movie really starts as a horror movie. So the house, which is actually a machine, as I said, and we will talk about that more later. The house itself seems to be as dangerous as the ghosts themselves, and that is shown obviously right away with the death of the lawyer. The moment the front door is completely sealed, behind several layers of those glass panes, right? That moment is as scary and tense as any ghost moment in this movie. They made the house feel almost alive, even though it's just a technological machine, obviously. The rotating discs with different colors in the center of the first floor of the house, and the rooms and the levers going up, signaling the opening of one of the containment cubes. They just add so much, just just attention to details. So it's kind of a way of you watching, gauging the risk level of certain areas of certain time periods in the movie, how the whole mechanism open the eye of hell and stuff is progressing, but we'll talk about more about this later. So we go to the bathroom where Kathy is getting acquainted with the place, right? And her almost deadly interaction with the angry princess. This is another scene that's pretty celebrated, let's put it like that, in horror circles of fans of the movie and stuff. The zoom, the camera zoom on the glass is a very nice touch, right? Showing that if she was using the glass, if she was seen, she were seeing what is actually happening in the spiritual plane in that room instead of just our regular plane, she would run right out of there because there's sorry written on the floor and there's blood everywhere, and she's like playing with the water in the bathtub and stuff, and the water turns to blood, and the angry princess is there. So it's a very tense scene. It's a very well designed scene because they are both there, but they are kind of not in the same phase. They are not in the same plane. But the angry princess can phase in and out of her plane to this plane, but Kathy can see her because she's not using the glasses and she's not psychic or anything like that. So, but it's established right away that the spirits in certain conditions can interact with the regular world because she opens the curtains to go to the bathtub and stuff. So that makes them very dangerous because you can't see them, but they can see you and they can interact with you. And obviously, the movie didn't need to establish how dangerous they are anymore because the opening sequence already does that, obviously, extremely well. But that was a very interesting scene there. And she's basically saved by her dad's voice that's calling her to look for Bobby, right? Bobby vanished while they were in the library and stuff. So Bobby's walking around the house and she's separated from Maggie now. And he goes to the basement. That's not correct. He passes through one of the glass panes, and the glass panes opens and reveals the stairs to the basement. And voices start creeping out of the basement, and he thinks is Maggie, the babysitter, which is just messing with him and telling him not to come down and stuff. And I like a lot the fact that seconds before he passes through the opening of the basement, two of the levers in the machine move upwards a few seconds, and the glass panes move to reveal the stairs, meaning that it's even more dangerous now to go down the stairs because not only the Angry Princess is out, but all of these other ghosts are also out. You don't know which one they are because you don't know which rune corresponds to the particular ghost in the zodiac. At this point in the movie, you don't even know that there's a zodiac. So you just think, well, if the lever went up and the Angry Princess was released, which we don't know yet that she has that name either, by the way. So probably there's more ghosts there, and obviously they are calling him down and stuff. And he's a kid, obviously. There's no way he could know that was a terrible idea. He doesn't know about the ghosts or anything like that. He wasn't there when Rafkin was having his spasms and explaining that there are ghosts in the basement and stuff. So we can't blame him, obviously. We hear his mom's ghostly voice for the first time in this scene too. We don't know at this point in the movie that his mom is one of the ghosts, and we'll find out about it way later. And the voice is very interesting because his mother in the spiritual plane kind of kept most of her intellect. She's basically the same person but just dead in spiritual form. So she's trying to dissuade him from climbing down the stairs. She's basically pleading with him, please don't come, please don't go down, please stay upstairs. Pleading him not to do it, right? That's one of the most interesting aspects of this movie, that the story hasn't reached the point where they find out that Jean is the fourth ghost. But if you hear the only voice between the voices that is telling Bobby not to go down, you will immediately notice that something weird is going on. Obviously, this ghost wouldn't ask him to not go down, right? So there's something fishy. More on her a little bit later. So while Bobby is down there on the basement, upstairs, the folks are trying to break the doors down of the entrance, which is now blocked by several layers of the glass, right? So, and the glass is apparently unbreakable, so to no avail, it's not working. And they meet Dennis, and Arthur convinces Dennis to get together and start looking for Bobby. The only good Maggie joke in the entire movie happens here where she says, "Did the lawyer split?" Which, when I was younger, was a pretty funny joke. So at this point in the movie, only Dennis knows how bad the situation is, but he doesn't know how bad it's going to get because he doesn't know about the loose ghosts in the basement, and he doesn't know about the machine and stuff. So he only knows that there's ghosts, and the other ones are just trying to fight Bobby, who's obviously deep in the basement right now, while more and more ghosts are being released, right? So pretty bad place to be in. So he's down in the basement and he says, "Come on guys, stop hiding." And you're watching going, that's the one thing you don't say in that situation, man. That's a very bad phrase to use there, but obviously he doesn't know. So while they are looking for Bobby upstairs, Dennis explains to them the purpose of the glass panes, which are one of the most interesting devices in the movie. So they are made of ectobar glass. They are shatterproof and soundproof, and covered in containment spells written in Latin, so spells that the ghost must obey. So you realize hearing this that the house is as much a prison for them as humans as it is for the ghosts themselves, right? Because even if they escape their smaller containment cubes, it's a cage within a cage, basically, right? So those glass panes are an amazing creation, not only of the movie creators, right, of human engineering, but also of a spiritual ingenuity in a way. Because think about it, they are made out of an extremely resistant glass that can seal a ghost in when it's covered in containment spells. They are soundproof, they are almost unbreakable. So, supposing that the ghosts also avoid touching a spell covered glass pane, there would be only one way to disrupt their containment, right? Which would be by opening the cube, and the one way to interact with them, with the ghosts stuck inside, would be wearing the spectral viewers, the glasses that the characters use to actually see the ghosts. So it's not only well thought out by the creators, right? It's also a very intelligent and specific solution that Cyrus developed to be able to collect them and then keep them contained and only release them when almost all steps of his master plans are completed, right? So in all its glorious like impossibilities and reality breaking concepts, the movie still was crafted respecting its own internal rules for the most part, which is a basically a lost art these days, let's be honest. So all right, back to the movie. So Bobby finally started seeing the ghost in the basement. He first sees the bound woman, which was calling him down, obviously, like twitching in the corridor. Then he sees the torso, which is a very scary sight. If you watch this as a kid, I'm sure you remember this scene. It's a very scary ghost to look at. It's not a terrifying ghost to fight, I imagine, but it's a very terrifying one to look at for sure. And he runs away from the torso, obviously, and he knocks his fat head on the ectobar glass, just bam. Then we have another very effective tension building scene when Maggie notices the extra spells on the floor, and Dennis wonders why Cyrus would need even more protection. So by this point, he's already noticing that the situation is way worse than he could ever think that it could be, right? The spells on the floor theoretically should be unnecessary if the ghosts are only stuck in their containment cubes downstairs, because the cubes are all covered in spells. So the only reason it would there would be a need to have extra spells is if the ghosts somehow escaped or were released, and that were released part is the part that he starts suspecting, right? So back in the basement, Bobby finally meets his mother. The kid is not that great of an actor. He's actually really bad, but luckily he doesn't show up a lot in the movie, and so ends up being a plus. But the moment he meets his mother, he's captured by Cyrus. So we see Cyrus, but we don't know exactly if he's a ghost, if he's alive, what the hell he is. But we do know, obviously, that he's the main villain of the thing. So now I have to actually go into a small tangent here. At various points in the movie, the characters meet the ghosts in hallways and corridors and stuff, and the ghosts notice them. They notice their presence, but they don't charge them, and they don't attack them on sight. So a lot of people complained about that while watching the movie. And there's actually an in-movie explanation for this, which is not all suffering ghosts that are stuck on our plane of existence are that violent. And some, like Jean, for example, are basically non-violent. So as not only the laws and rules that they have to obey are different, from living beings in our plane. Their own existence and thoughts, I imagine, are probably very different too. So it's probably impossible to determine the whys and the hows of their actions. Maybe it's instinct that leads some of them to resort to violence, or maybe some emotions in particular draws them in somehow. So who knows, right? The cynical, obviously, moviegoer will conclude that the main characters just have plot armor, which is obviously perfectly plausible. But I can mentally buy into the idea that the ghosts are mostly incapable of rationally choosing courses of action, with the notable exceptions of Jean, who's probably still attuned to our plane of existence somehow. Maybe she's too young, a ghost, or maybe the way she died didn't make her lose most of her sanity and stuff. And the ghosts that either were already violent in life or had the most brutal deaths and decide to hunt and haunt the living. But that's just how I look at it. You can take it or leave it. It's just a theory. So back to the movie. They finally start looking for Bobby in the basement. Uh, Dennis and Arthur, they make a deal between themselves, and Arthur promises to pay Dennis, right, everything that Cyrus owed him, so he could help look for Bobby in the basement. So they go, and that there's this very underrated scene when they first go downstairs to the basement, and Dennis is using the spectral viewers, the glasses, and he's looking around to see if there's any ghosts on the loose and stuff. And we see him passing the Juggernaut, just pacing behind the panes. I don't know if it's in the end of the corridor and stuff. And man, as a teenager, I was like, man, get the hell out of there. If that dude has been released, he's going to break out everybody. That those small details in the movie, I think, are just as scary and interesting as anything else that's in the movie. Just a reminder that these dudes are here, are even if you don't see them all the time, they are behind the containment cubes or walking around, so you have to be wary, right? And it's just a little thing that does a lot for you if you pay attention. So they split up because, of course, they do. That's a horror law. You have to split up, right? Otherwise, nothing happens in the movie. And you see in this scene how Dennis is already starting to emotionally connect to Arthur. He's starting to kind of rely on him a little bit in this situation, which will eventually lead him to like and respect him, and later on, ultimately, sacrifice himself for Arthur's sake and stuff. So Dennis notices that there are open containment cubes in the basement for the first time, and Maggie finally sees her first ghost, right? The hammer. Dennis gives her the glasses and is happy that somebody finally noticed the ghost as well. So when Dennis comes back to give the ghost the finger, he sees a vision of his own future, right? Another one of his psychic abilities, apparently. We don't know the extent of them yet. So we know that he's going to die because he saw it. We just don't know the context, right? But we'll see it later. So Arthur finds Bobby's tape recorder and listens to it, and it's obviously not good. And Dennis recognizes the symbol of the jackal in one of the containment cubes that are opened, right? He calls him the Charles Manson of the ghosts, so that's never good. So he tells Maggie that they have to leave, whatever, screw the kid, because if the jackal is out, then all bets are off, right? So this is another great, good tension building scene. The great thing about this movie that they spread the threats around. So there's like not one or two ghosts that are very dangerous. There are several of them, and there are several of the other ones that could be dangerous in different situations, right? So basically, the scene tells us that there's another extremely violent ghost besides the Juggernaut, which we already know that is extremely dangerous, and the Hammer, which just scared them both seconds before. And obviously, the Hammer looks scary as hell, so he really looks like a violent one. And this jackal dude is on the loose. So obviously, that brings us to the first Jackal attack on Kathy. They edited this attack in a very chaotic way that a lot of people don't like because it's flashing images and you see the attack in one angle, then the angle shifts, so you kind of don't know exactly what happening all the time and stuff. Basically, showing the confusion of the situation because Arthur can see the ghosts without the glasses, so for him, she's just being pushed up and pulled by an invisible force that's like wrecking her body and stuff. But obviously, she is seeing her, him, of course. So then Kalina shows up for the first time inside the house and helps them out. The best part is at the very beginning when Kathy puts the glasses and the jackal is just right at her face. He's just right there. It's just perfect. And you may think why she didn't notice it and something. Probably because he was phased out. He was completely in the spiritual plane. The moment he was lunging forward, the moment he was going to attack her, is the moment that he phases in. You know, it's the moment that he bridges the gap and materializes as best as he can, so he can affect the real world. You know, so that's how I see it. Obviously, it could be just a mistake or something. And the way he tries to rip her clothes too during the scene where he start clawing her and try to remove her bra and stuff makes perfect sense given his backstory, which is not shown in the movie actually, but on the DVD extras, the ghost files that I have already spoken about at the beginning of the video, in which they explain that he was a sexual predator when he was alive. So that makes perfect sense that he would attack a lady and try to rip her clothes off, even if extremely violently, right? And the other part that's interesting is that Kalina's Quicksilver flares actually work against the Jackal. She throws at him and he just vanishes, or as I'm using the term here, he phases out. So probably there's a mystic reason as to why the ghosts are afraid of them. Maybe it's the composition, maybe it's the mercury, who knows, right? So differently from my conjectures that I made before, after getting separated from the humans, the jackal actually touches the spells on the glass panels. So I was conjecturing before about ghosts not being able to do it. So they can touch it, but probably it's not a pleasing experience to them, and they probably obviously can't go through. So maybe they can touch them, but they cannot go through them, right? So after Arthur and Kathy are saved by Kalina, Arthur finally sees a ghost for the first time, the jackal with the glasses, the spectral viewers. And there's a lot of finalies in this movie. It's one of those movies where we always know more about everything that's happening than the individual characters. So we get to see them experience something that we already know. So Kalina explains that Cyrus enslaves souls, and she intends to set them free. So she shows him the Arcanum, the book. The book was written by Basilius, an astrologer that was possessed by a demon in the 15th century. So Cyrus built the machine that is described in the book, that was designed by the devil, basically, and is powered by the souls of the dead to see into the future, and they are trapped inside this machine right now. You know, so that's the brilliance of this movie on full display right here. So in the beginning, you see Cyrus and then he's trapping the second to last ghost for some reason. Then Arthur and his family inherit the house and end up being trapped in it with ghosts loose in the basement. So as horror movies go, if you think about it, there's more than enough, right? So you put some kills in, some kind of resolution in the end, and folks that survived escaped the doomed house and stuff, done. You know, you told the story. So there's no need for more. But that's when this movie hits you, right? With the fact that this house is a machine, the ghosts are its power supply, and it was designed by the devil himself while he possessed a poor astrologist more than 500 years ago. And this Cyrus guy was crazy enough to build this thing and lock his family in to make it work. You know, that's some true dedication to a vision there. That's a pure passion project, right? passion for a story and its details, and that's what this movie does best. You know, I've already spoken about this, going the extra mile to realize the vision. So even if you don't like it, you can help but respect it that they went the extra mile so many times. You know. So Kathy vanishes while they had the history class, and Kalina was explaining the story of the place. And the ghost sightings ramp up by a lot at this point in the movie because most of them are already out now. So Dennis ends up getting stuck in a small square space with the thorn prints, and Maggie uses the spectral viewers to help him dodge the baseball bat attack of the ghost and to get him to safety. It's just a little something that you have to put in the movie. If you had this glasses, this mechanism that makes you see ghosts, and when you don't have it, you just can't see them. So it shows the importance of actually being able to see the ghosts, right? So the two groups finally meet again, right? They were separated, and but the Hammer's containment cell opens before Arthur can climb out of the basement. Another one of those oh no moments that this movie is full of. You know, every time something opens and a ghost leaves, it's an ordeal. So they are able to drag him up before the Hammer's reaches him, so he's safe for now. And then for like a solid minute, I think for like a full minute, we just have shots of the house. This is basically my third favorite sequence in the movie, only behind the junkyard and Danny's death. It's the shots showing mainly the basement, showing the structure, showing the power cables that connect to the containment cubes. But the only signs of the ghosts are the devilish laughters that usually accompany their presence, but nothing like visual. You don't see any ghosts in the sequence. And the reason I like this sequence so much is for two reasons. So first, there's a strange. This is going to sound super weird, I know, but there's a strange Lord of the Rings vibe to it, because it shows how important the house is and how his workings are vital to the story, and basically almost transforming the house itself into the main quote unquote character of the story. Just like the Middle Earth is the living, breathing, world that is vital to any character in Tolkien stories, right? So it's like the house is a character and is the main one, the most important part. And secondly, that's what you would see if you went to the basement, right? At that point, without the glasses, you would only see dark and somber glass hallways and corridors that are strangely cold and lifeless for some reason, with the sounds of laughter being the only way to identify the presence of a ghost. That and being obviously torn to shreds by an invisible force, of course. That's what I missed the most in the movie. Was a couple of kills, just a couple of kills, in which the characters in question didn't have the spectral viewers in their hands or put on, so they were just eviscerated in thin air with no explanation, or no visual cue, no nothing, just exploding like Doom style. But hey, happy with what we did get, of course. But that would have been a cool visual, and this whole sequence reminds you that without the glasses, without the ability to know that the ghosts are there, you would just hear. You would maybe feel a little cold or hot or whatever, and you would be basically instantly mauled to death, depending on which ghost you met down there, right? So back to the action. Arthur is attacked by the jackal, but he's saved by the flare again, right? And the Scooby Gang rushes to the library to avoid the pilgrims, which, by the way, is the most underrated ghost of the 12, in my opinion, easily. Should have been used more. I love the witchy vibe that she has while running around with her hands and head stuck on a pillory. I think that's what that thing is called, a pillory, right? Basically a medieval torture device to keep people in public places to either punish them publicly by shaming them, or basically letting them die, right? From starvation probably, or people throwing rocks at them and stuff. But it's a very cool look and flavorful, right? For a lady that, in her story in the Ghost Files, was basically a lady that was left to die of starvation in that device, right? For allegedly being a witch. So as as hundreds and hundreds, probably, or maybe thousands of women died in that period because they were accused of being witches, right? So she was one more of those, unfortunately for her. They talk it out in the library. Another great performance by Matthew Lillard here. Again, the dude is the MVP of the movie, really. And Arthur finds out that his deceased wife is one of the ghosts trapped in the house. He punches Dennis and blames him for everything and stuff. And the punch Arthur gives Dennis here looks amazing, by the way. John Wick would be proud of that punch. Then Kalina opens the Arcanum and explains to Arthur the Black Zodiac, the spirit Cyrus caught to make the machine work, right? So the thing that I like the most about the movie is the book and the Arcanum, the idea of the Black Zodiac. So I love the fact that these spirits had to be specifically handpicked by Cyrus to play the part of each of the archetypes, right? Present in the book. So you have to remember, thinking about the Arcanum, that the book is centuries older than Cyrus is, right? So that means that Cyrus and Dennis did not capture the specific spirits that are on the book. There are no specific spirits in the book, but they rather looked for suitable placeholders to fulfill the requirements of the machine, which also means that if someone else, anybody else, had the book at a different time in history and tried to go after the spirits, there's a huge possibility that they would have captured 12 completely different spirits, with similar characteristics to the ones in the book. So basically, that makes the story that is told in this movie open-ended. It's not completely closed and completely finished, because the book and the possible copies and other spirits, including the original ones, are still out there, basically. So just an interesting thought for potentially maybe one day a franchise based on 13 Ghosts. So the movie never closes completely the door. So she then talks to about the Ocularis Infernum, so the Eye of Hell, which gives the bearer all seeing, unlimited powers, and it's the final reward, right, that Cyrus wants to receive for activating the machine and doing all this stuff. So she also talks about the 13th ghost, the only ghost that needs to be created by an act of pure love, via a willing sacrifice, basically leaping into the eye, right, and short-circuiting the system. So this is by far the biggest catch in the movie. When I was a teenager, I did not understand this part so well. There was a lot of tough words here for me. So the way she explains it makes it sound like the 13th ghost is basically a failsafe, right? It's a way to abort the whole process. And she explains that Arthur would have to be the 13th ghost and would have to trade his life for the life of his kids by basically jumping into the eye and short-circuiting the machine, right? But that's only because that's exactly what Cyrus needs to completely finish the process. He needs the 13th ghost to activate the machine, and she's in league with him, but we don't know that yet, right? So the 13th ghost is actually a final ingredient to the whole soup that is the machine, not the spoiler, right? But obviously they don't know that yet, so they just buy what she tells him. So Dennis says that there should be a better way and that the 13th ghost situation doesn't add up, which he was right. He knew right away that something was fishy again. She's kind of attuned to this type of stuff, right? But Arthur only cares about his kids, so he's incredibly worried about them. So they decide to leave the library and look for his kids one last time. So this time they are taking with them the one Ectobar glass pane, one of those filled with the spells. So this is a very clever way that the movie uses of justifying the inclusion of the very classic horror movie trope of people just throwing themselves back into danger when they already escaped it somehow to generate some extra tension, right? Because in this particular case, there's a family reason involved, and there's also the time constraint, right? Right, the ghosts are being released, and there's only one left, and when the ghost is released, the final process of the machine will begin, right? So basically, what they have to do is they have to go, but they go using what they think is going to give them the best chance of surviving. So in this particular situation, when you are in a house, when you have this bunch of glass panes that are full with anti-ghost spells, basically, what do? You basically take one with you when you go out, right? So that's reasonable, that's sensible, that makes a lot of sense, you know. So they are not Dumbos. that's and that's a good thing. That's my point, you know. It's way harder to care about morons in horror movies. We usually want these people to die in horror movies than it is to care about people whose brains works mostly like mine and yours would in that situation, you know. And it's something that more horror movies need to learn, right? And to this day, they get dumber and dumber. But logic is sexy, man. It really, truly is, especially in a horror movie. So again, they leave the library, and there's more shots of the house and the open containment cubes and stuff. Just 20 seconds to set the tone, you know. And Meg and Kalina find 50% of the lawyer, a portion of him, while they are walking around, right? And they reach the core of the machine, directly below the rotating circles in the floor above. So we finally understand a little bit how the mechanism kind of works, right? The machine is very noisy. It's very loud, so you might think, how folks didn't heard it on the floor above, and then you remember, right, that the Ectobar soundproof glass is also on the ceiling of the basement and obviously on the flooring of the first floor, as the movie already told us before. So it does make sense that nobody heard the machine, right? So while Arthur and Dennis deal with the torn prints, basically ramming him into a wall with the Ectobar glass, Cyrus shows up finally in the core, and Kalina, for a lack of a better term, just books out Maggie, and their collusion is finally revealed, right? So she then goes on a little villain explains the plot tirade when talking to Cyrus, and gives Cyrus the final spells to complete the process. Then we go to my second favorite sequence in the movie, in which Dennis decides to protect Arthur from the hammer, pushing him into the corner. So the hammer is going to attack them, and Dennis just pushes Arthur into a corner behind the Ectobar glass. And while he's distracting the ghost, trying to dodge the attacks from the hammer, the problem is that the biggest, oh god, please no, horror movie moment, in my opinion, of all time happens right when he's dodging the hammer attacks, right? The last ghost, which happens to be the Juggernaut, is released in the adjacent corridor, right? So, and he marches towards Dennis while the hammer crushes Dennis' hand and his back too. And then the Juggernaut just gets nostalgic, I guess, about his breaker days, and just destroy Dennis, you know, just breaks him in half. Man, those few seconds where you see the hammer behind Dennis, just preparing the hammer hand to just crush him from behind, and you see the Juggernaut just beelining towards him, you know, these are some of the best seconds ever produced in the history of horror, the entire history of the genre, of everything I've ever watched and read. It's so good, man. It just is so good. The camera before the Juggernaut actually reaches Dennis and starts just breaking him. You can look into his eyes, and the makeup and the job that the actor did here were excellent. You look into the dead eyes of Mr. Mahoney fellow here, and there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing there. There's no life. There's no doubts about what he's about to do. There's no reasoning. There's no nothing. There's just pure violence and instinct, you know? If the Jackal is the Charles Manson of ghosts, the Juggernaut is basically the Michael Myers or the Jason Voorhees of ghosts. It's just a relentless, unstoppable killing machine, you know? It's easily my favorite ghost. It's the most threatening one. It's the one that does more damage in the movie, and it's also the one that will haunt you in your sleep. Not because of him looking a certain way, being scary, but also because he can absolutely pulverize people, with his bare hands. And he could do this while he was alive too. So there's even that. So can you imagine, just for a second, stop and imagine if he had been the first one released, since they were not being released completely in order. Imagine if he was the first one released from the cubes by the lawyer in the beginning. This movie would be like 40 minutes long, because he would instantly hear the people on the top, because the ghost can hear through the glass, and the movie shows several points where the ghost can hear. I remember a scene where the angry princess looks up when he hears people upstairs, so the soundproof part doesn't work for the ghosts. They can hear through the glass, so he would instantly hear the human beings on the top floor. And since there was nothing preventing him from leaving the basement, other than they have to wait, he would have to wait at that particular moment when Bobby passes through the doors and the two levers go up and the doors open. At that moment, he would be free. He would basically free to roam the entire house and kill whatever, and he would. So the movie had to kind of control his power a little bit. So he had to be the last one, not only because he's the most physically imposing one and threatening one, but because if he was released too early, the movie would not have worked, because they would have to make him less threatening or not attack in some points, or simply disappear the movie and stuff, and that would have made him, particularly as an entity in the movie, silly, So that was a good thing. So after ordering Kalina to put the kids in jeopardy to force Arthur to jump in the eye, our good old Uncle Cyrus here start the summoning chants, right, to bring all the ghosts to the Ocularis Infernum in the center of the house. So the Ocularis opens up, probably to start draining the energy of the slave souls, right? So the Black Zodiac. So the Black Zodiac is basically powers the machine. So that's why they stand there all paralyzed when they are on the top of their particular rooms on the rotating disc and stuff, is because they are being drained, basically, right? And a very small but very interesting, cool detail in the scenes where the ghosts are being summoned. So they are in different parts of the house, and they start basically disappearing and reappearing in the center of the house. So they are being forced to go there. Cool small details: the wind blowing through the torn clothes that the Juggernaut is wearing before he turns around and goes to the center of the house. So he just killed Dennis. The hammer goes to the center of the house, and the Juggernaut turns and starts directing himself to the center of the house as well, right? So in that moment, you can see something that they did with the other ghosts too, which is his clothes start flailing around like there's a wind blowing, and it's kind of signaling, I read this as signaling a little bit of what I proposed before, that the ghosts are phasing in and out of existence in our plane, and that this wind is not from our plane of existence, because there's no wind in a sealed basement, right? There's no windows, there's no wind, there's nothing. So that wind is basically, instead of being a wind in our plane, it's rather a remnant of the other plane that the ghosts also walk on. And that never completely fades away because the ghosts belong to both their plane and ours. So they are biplane beings, right? Obviously, I imagine the creators just turned on some fans to cause the effect because it looked cool and supernatural and stuff, and it does. But I'll be sticking to my story though. It's cooler, and it's one of those small things that you can piece in your head together and make the world and the movie itself work way better for you if you kind of juggle all these informations and all these happenings around and try to create an universe in your head, you know. So the movie gives you a little bit of space to play around with the elements that they give you in your head, you know. Then after the hammer and the juggernaut are called to the center of the house, Arthur finally has the opportunity to meet his wife in her ghostly form, but the talk is cut pretty short, right? Because she's also summoned to the Eye because she's one of the members of the Black Zodiac. So he just meets her and just melts down and stuff. And this part, when I was a teenager, I did not understand so well, or as well as I can understand it now. So Cyrus ends up killing Kalina. He crushes her between two glass panes and stuff. And I didn't understand so well at the time why you would kill your second in command like that, you know. But now I imagine that's because he doesn't want to share his powers with anybody, of course. And she probably outlived her usefulness to him anyways. So to avoid her turning on him, eventually he just lets her go to hell. And funny thing about her dying is that Dennis dies too in the house, and he shows up later in the story. The lawyer also dies in the house, and Kalina also dies in the house. But Kalina and the lawyer don't show up because the story doesn't need them. But also, you can imagine the reason beyond them not being necessary anymore in the story is that Kalina was crushed. So if she was a ghost, she were to become a ghost, she would be a ghost more less useful than the torso, which is the most useless one. And the lawyer was cut in half vertically, right? So I don't know if he would even be able to walk around. He wouldn't be practical. So at least we have that to go to explain why these other two don't show up again. But obviously, could be also a mistake, a time constraint, or any other reason. A story doesn't need them or something like that. But that's my conjectures about why Dennis shows up and they don't show up again in the movie, even though their spirit obviously is stuck in the house. So Arthur sees his kids tied up and at the center of the eye thing, right? The machine, the upper part. So he's supposed to jump in that, as far as he understands, right? So if he jumps between the 12 ghosts being there and the machine, he jumps right in the middle. He dies. Machine stops. He saves his kids. To this point in the movie, that's what we understand that he has to do, right? So he puts the spectral viewers and sees the ghosts standing in their respective rooms on the outer rotating disc part of the eye, all paralyzed, as I said, and being drained, right, by the machine. So he then notices Cyrus standing at the end of the corridor, and he starts reviewing his head. So he looks at Cyrus, looks at the eye, and looks at the ghosts, one by one, just like Kalina told him. So he reveals it as the ghosts that are part of the Black Zodiac, which is basically this movie's last chance of showing off its ghosts to the audience, right? A send off. And basically concludes that Cyrus can be a ghost that's part of the Black Zodiac because there's 12 in the machine and he is the 13th. So he removed the glasses. He removes the glasses and notices that obviously Cyrus is alive. So he charges at him, but eventually gets beat up by him. And then Cyrus explains his evil plot, like James Bond style. You know, I did this because of this. I chose you because of that, and that type of stuff. And the fact that the 13th ghost is not a failsafe is actually the final requirement of the machine. So it is a ghost that's created by an act of love. But the ghost is just like the others. It's just one more ingredient to make the machine work and to open the eye of hell. So the 13th ghost in this case is a necessity. It's not a failsafe or anything of that sort, right? So that's why Cyrus chose specifically Arthur and his family, right? So then comes by far the biggest shortcoming of the movie, in my opinion, and a part that was criticized and is criticized to this day, which is Baggy messing up with the controls of the music player that's playing the spells, right? Basically canceling the spells entirely, which frees the ghosts from their paralysis, stasis type of situation, and they all go for Cyrus, and together they get him and carry him and throw him into the eye, which is basically a fitting revenge for the enslaved souls. Then his spirit manifests itself for Arthur and tells him that he still has the power to finish this, and he has to go to his kids. So, this Dennis Rafkin guy, I have to talk about him. I've already said this. I'm going to be more specific a little bit. He's my favorite non-villain horror movie character ever. Not only because of Matthew Lillard's great, passionate performance that he gives, but also because he has a great character arc, you know, and a very poetic ending to his story when you think about it. He's the psychic ghost hunter that becomes trapped in the same glass box where the ghosts he captures are locked up. And it's only saved by the one person, the one guy that finally made him like himself in the end. So it's beautiful in kind of a Frankenstein horrific kind of way, you know, but truly exquisite. I really like this character. I really like this arc. I really like the story. So his part is the one that I would change the least in the movie, really. So the machine explodes in the basement while Arthur jumps and dodges the blades in the eye and covers his kids during the explosion, right? All the glasses that make up the house shatter, basically, and all the ghosts are set free because no glasses to keep them locked up anymore, right? Including Dennis. So he checks on them one last time and then just phases out. Jean's spirit, the mom, manifests itself one last time too, in her pre-accident self, to say her final goodbyes. Final goodbyes. George Carlin would have rolled up in his grave after hearing this one. Again, another very small detail that I like too. She manifests herself in the physical world, meaning that they can see her without the glasses, but she does that while still standing on her specific symbol on the rotating disc, the position that she was before the house exploded, right? Meaning even now, she's drawn to it somehow, you know. The symbol represents her somehow. So then the movie ends with Maggie quitting her babysitting job after the whole ghostly ordeal, let's put it that way. So now, as I said before, this whole ending sequence ended up coming off as a completely random solution to the movie because basically Maggie saved the day by just messing with the machine, and her joke in the end and the credits music also reeks of that early 2000s cool horror movie vibe, you know, that folks were looking for back in the day. And even then, that was not good. That was bad, you know. And nowadays, the clash with the overall tone of the movie is even more obvious and silly when you think about a lot of horror movies that are very serious in how they are executed on screen. And you think about what they done in this movie, especially in the end, it's a little bit rough. So I wish the ending had a more climactic and somber feel to it. You know, a more maybe even a less happy solution. No messing with the machines and stuff. Because if you notice, in the end, Arthur doesn't need to jump in the machine anymore because he's not the failsafe, and the machine is already broken because Maggie broke it on the basement. So the only argument for him jumping into the eye is to protect his kids from the explosion because the machine is going to explode the entire house, right? But the whole part about the failsafe and stuff ended up being nothing really because Cyrus failed, right? So that whole climatic ending doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you think about it. But even taking into consideration all these problems, obviously I still love this movie. It's still my favorite horror movie of all time. So as I said in the beginning of the video, I'll be doing 2 more videos about 13 Ghosts. I am not going to do a specific video about the ghosts because first of all, the Ghost Files, which is the extra on the DVDs that explain the ghostly stories of each of the members of the Zodiac, is pretty straightforward. It just tells the story, 2 minutes for each ghost and stuff. And other YouTubers already have done a great job of retelling those stories, so there's no need to make a video just about them, I think. I'll be doing 2 more videos, one adding and removing some stuff from the movie, and trying to make it even better, right? Basically wondering what could have been if they did this or that, if they switched this or that, if they didn't use this device or that, you know. And the second video that I'm going to do is going to be one with suggestions and idea to expand the lore of the movie. So new stories, different routes that they could take to kind of transform 13 Ghosts into an actual franchise. So new stories that could be told, some aspects of the movie that were left open for interpretation, and how to use them in future installments or in a series or in a book or anything like that. If you watched to this point, I thank you. I apologize for my English. I know it's not very good, but I'm going to work on it. This channel will be a good opportunity to train it, actually. And I'll be working on the next 2 13 Ghosts videos that I just proposed. And we'll see what the future holds. What will be the next movie or story that I'm going to work on. But I hope to see you again, guys, in the next video. Thank you very much, and we shall meet again, guys.